You've been living in the vampire world for 15 years now, almost that. Well, probably longer.
So
with
weird.
all the development.
Yeah.
Why do you find that vampires are so alluring and engaging with other people, and how do you find ways to keep them fresh for you? To not just rest on your laurels and think, oh, okay, Vampire Diaries is such a hit, I'm just going to keep doing the same thing over and over.
I think the reason I'm so drawn to them is because I find the idea of a vampire to be a very lonely thing, and I love to write stories about finding your person or your squad, or like who's your family. And so it's a really great opportunity to take a creature who by definition is destined to walk the earth alone and give them a journey that allows them to find some kind of connection in this world. And I just keep going back to that because it moves me. But the interesting thing about the representation of vampires across my different shows is that the lore is evolving with society. And so, for example, in Vampire Diaries, a Damon Salvatore could be compelling a girl to come home with them, and they could have hot sex, and everyone's like, ooh, that's so hot. Whereas 2, 3, 4 years later, someone's like, well, that's rapey, and then we have this sensual, the lore that we are so familiar with, my generation, is sensual, predatory creatures that really take advantage of women and maidens. And then I got to Legacies, and we're like, well, we can't do that. We're in Me Too, we're in Time's Up. That character is not a hero, that's a villain. And so then we got to have some fun with, our feminist vampire MG and Legacies, and, the one who's like, I'm not going to exploit a woman in such a way. And so then you get all the way to Vampire Academy, and then it becomes about class and the system and the rules of the system and what's okay and what's not okay, and who they're oppressing. So there's a constant evolution of themes that make it a lot of fun and differentiates it really well.
So why Vampire Academy? What?
Vampire Academy was a book series that I read 15 years ago, before Vampire Diaries. And I just really liked it. I really, really liked it. A lot of YA series that you read when you're an adult seem kind of slim and slight and don't really hold up the way they do when you're a kid reading them. And this is something I read as an adult that I thought, no, this is a good story. This is romantic. This is exciting. This is a world that I've never seen before. A powerful, powerful love story and a beautiful friendship story all in one. It was always in the back of my head, and even as I was making Vampire Diaries and then Originals and Legacies, I always had Vampire Academy in my brain, so much so that thinking I'd never make Vampire Academy made me want to make Legacies so that I could still tell a similar boarding school kind of story. So for me, it wasn't about I'm just going to, stick to what I'm good at. It was like, no, this is a story I've always wanted to tell, and now I get a chance to do it.
How do you balance the source material, because you're trying to please fans, but you're paving your own way?
Yes. So in this particular case, because the books are old, we felt as long as we treat the source material with the respect that we feel for it and what we love about it, which is a lot, we should be able to still have the freedom to move pieces of it around and to make up new pieces, because whilst yes, there are going to be a handful of people that have read each of those 6 books 100 times and will be the loudest on the internet, the reality is most people read it when they were 15 and now they're 30. It's a fond memory, it's a fond nostalgia, and so we did feel like that gave us a little bit of freedom to play. And being able to play when you're a writer adapting someone else's material is the freedom, and that's the fun part, as opposed to going into an adaptation where you feel like you need to be 99% true to what you had in the source material. So we had a lot of fun, and what's been a lot of fun as a result is watching, for example, Rochelle Mead, who's the author, enjoying ride as she watches it, seeing what we've changed, asking herself like, ooh, I wonder why they changed that, or saying things like, oh, that's smart because you, like, a cool book thing doesn't necessarily translate to a cool TV thing. And so she's been talking out loud in podcasts and stuff about what changes she really has enjoyed and why, and that's been fun to experience as well.
So would you know, this is your baby, you've been, you know, nurturing this a long time. How do you feel about, like, your role? I mean, you're writing, you're show running, you're doing it all, and also the directing. Are you directing?
Yeah, I directed next week's episode.
Oh, excellent. Can you
Which
tell
I
us a little bit
love.
about it?
Sure. It's as we end episode 7, which just dropped this morning. We know that the race for Queen has really heated up, and in spite of all of Tatiana's duplicity and Victor's scrambling to get the votes, it's gotten so messy that the Queen invokes the trials as the thing that will determine who the next monarch will be. And the trials are basically like sort of supernatural, a series of supernatural experiences that then the elements decide who wins. So it's not about the church and it's not about the Queen, it's about the elements, which is where all their rules are rooted. So while that's going on, we have the fallout of all the relationship shifts at the end of episode 7, which is Rose and Lissa are in a friend fight, and Rose and Dimitri have broken up, and Lissa's realized that she's able to marry Christian Ozera to get her quorum back, and so, you know, we're going to get to see what she does with that piece of information.
So it sounds actiony.
Yeah, it's super actiony. It's super soapy. It's great emotion, and it was a lot of fun. So I balance directing. I try to direct once a year if I can. If I can carve out the time. It's hard for me to say to other people that, you know, have hired me to do show running that, oh, I'm also going to take 3 weeks and go do this instead. So I try to direct shows that I'm also show running so that at least I'm still working. But I love it. It's one of my favorite parts of the whole thing.
Yeah. So I can see you really are
it's a
into
lot
it.
of fun, and it's a really good challenge, and so I try to do it when I can.
Great. Thank you.
I've also read the books about 15 years ago,
Yeah.
and when the movie came out, I thought, oh, this is going to be great, and then it didn't do so well.
Yeah.
What inspired you and Margaret to say, oh, I think we can tackle this and have a different point of view or a different story, and I think we can do better than they did, basically?
Yeah, well, we sort of did it in reverse order in that I convinced Universal to make the show before I had gone back and reread the books. So then after they said yes, I said, oh, I better go back and reread everything and make sure there's actually a show here. And in the first book, I got a little nervous because I realized, like, you know, the bulk of this first book is predicated on this teacher-student dynamic. And then you have this young woman, Lissa, who's basically being told what to do by the Queen, told who to marry. And I thought, like, that's not relevant anymore. But that's what triggered this idea of, like, well, that's the point, right? It's not relevant anymore. And so therefore, why is this society stuck in these old ways? And can we make a show about a society that is far past its time? And then really dig into the themes that are there in the books. They're just more buried, about inequality and persecution and that kind of thing. And then also, before we got to the cool, smart stuff, which is Marguerite, thank you, I was realizing, you know, I love this idea of this princess and these ball gowns and tiaras and the parties, but, like, how do I tell that story in this day and age? And then I just watched Bridgerton and thought, you know what, like, you just go for it. You create a society that is both ancient and modern at the same time. You get all the great Regency vibes. You get the beautiful costumes. You get the fairy tale imagery. But you're also telling a story about class distinction and an oppressed class. So it's we got to do all of it.
Now, see, I didn't read the books, I have to say, but I'm really enjoying the characters, and I'm assuming that the characters that we've been seeing so far are also in the books. Are you going to introduce a character that isn't in the books, something of your own creation?
We have a character who is alluded to in the books, but never represented in story, that we want to create a story for next season that we're really excited about. And we also sort of created Tatiana out of just an idea. And we have a big, huge story for her in second season that kind of explains why she is the way she is. Because first season, she's just sort of a schemer and a manipulator. And second season, we'll really understand what her past is, what she's doing this all for, what is driving her, what is meaningful to her. So we're looking forward to that.
Now, they talk about the human world.
Yes.
Are we going to see
Yes.
them in the human world?
Not in season 1, but yes, absolutely. And we're very excited about that. We're excited to show the human world. Well, they go to Portugal. Sorry, I should rephrase that. In the 7th episode, 6th and 7th that just dropped, they do go into the human world briefly. But as far as seeing Rose and Lissa living in the human world, we will see that hopefully next season. And we'll also dig deeper into the rules of the treaty, the human treaty, what separates the vampires and the humans, and who the enforcers of that treaty are. We'll get into that next season as well.
And we've met Adrian this
Yes.
season. And I have to ask, is Sydney in the plans?
Sydney is
Can
definitely.
we expect a Bloodline spin-off?
Well, the first I'm rooting for season 2, and then I will start whispering spin-off into everyone's ears. But yeah, I mean, I love that relationship. That was one of my favorites. So as long as I'm around, then Sydney's on my list.
How many episodes in the first season?
10.
So, I guess it's episode 5. Mikhail,
Yeah.
I just screamed out loud. It might probably scare my cats. Is there going to be another moment before the first season where I'm going to scream out loud?
Yes,
and
but
just
yes, but like not in a oh God, how could you do that to me way? More in a oh my God, I did not see that coming kind of way, I think.
it was both.
Yeah.
So I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, poor Mikhail. Well, because also Mikhail, having not read the books, he was very, very important character in like the later books, in books 5 and 6, and so that was a big choice for us to stray from the path of the books and to kill a beloved character early, which we did just to be reckless and show people that you don't know everything you think you know.
Mm-hmm.